Hello and welcome. Welcome everybody to the Virginia Democratic Small Business Caucus show live. And folks, we're going to be having a little bit of a different show here today, but we're glad to see that you're all out here again. We've kind of lost our co-host. She's from Erin Porche is the Small Business Caucus chair from Louisiana, working with the Democratic Party down there as an interim Small Business Caucus chair. And she is not going to be here today. And we're all disappointed in that because they don't have any power in Baton Rouge and they don't have any power in New Orleans. So she's on her way to some place where she can keep her and her family safe. But everybody give a big shout out and a big support to Erin Porche, my co-host, because she's not going to be able to be here today, and I can do it without her, but it won't be as good, but it will be great for everyone else who wants to stay clued in. But let me tell you, we've got some great guests coming up, and I'll tell you who they are. If you saw the advertisement, we've got a fantastic special guest who's going to be speaking later on today, but we want to basically run down through what we usually do. And what we usually do is we come in first talking about our small business owners and letting folks know, hey, it is Woke Wednesday. And Woke Wednesday means that we're awake, we're paying attention. Some people say it's not good to be woke. I say it's not good to be asleep because we've got stuff to do. And on the VADSBC show live, we're here to tell you about those things and keep you engaged and keep you on board with what's going on. And let me tell you one thing where I usually would hand off and introduce to Erin. I'm going to go back and just walk through those things we always walk through. You know what we need to be able to do is we need to first keep everyone safe. And that means you need to get your vaccine if you choose to get it. We hope you get it. We want you to get it. And you want to continue to do all of that social distancing and all of that keeping yourself disinfected and clean, because we're not out of this pandemic yet, and you here at the VADSBC show live. So we want you to be here with us, and we want all your family and friends to be here with us, and we want the country out of this pandemic. So we've got some fantastic things that have happened since we've talked last. There's been an approval of the FDA of the Pfizer shot, and I believe the other ones were approved too, but I think it's just the Pfizer. But at least we know that's out the way. If that was an impediment to anybody, hey, it's been approved. Get vaccinated because we want you here with us. The next thing we want to go to and we want to talk about just a little bit is we want to make sure we take time to recognize all the folks who are struggling. There's struggles all over the world, but particularly here in the U.S., we know that Ida has been terrible in the different parts of the country, down in Louisiana and Mississippi, portions of the country near the water, and that whole area has a lot of water into it. In that area have been struck pretty hard, and they've been without power for 2 or 3 days, a lot of structural damage. You folks have been watching the news, but more importantly, we've got a lot of good people down there that are disaffected. And I just want to make sure that we take a little time to say, hey, if you can help folks out down there, make sure you do it. You can help folks make sure they stay engaged and do what they need to do, because we've got to stay engaged anyway. So it's all important that we stay engaged because, we like I said, we've lost our co-host. Our co-host, the Louisiana Small Business Caucus chair, Erin Porche, she's in Baton Rouge, and she's got to be leaving out of there to get her family safe. So she had to make sure she wasn't going to be here today. But that's okay. I've talked to her. Don't worry about it. Erin is safe. And we've got a great special guest that's coming on to the show. We've got him back in the green room. He's staying just relaxed back here until we bring him out. And I'm going to tell you a little more about him in a minute. But the other thing we want to talk about is, we did lose, I just want to say we've lost a lot of our servicemen, some of our servicemen recently. We just want to make sure we extend our prayers to them, and that as we're trying to do the right thing here in the country with the Democratic Party and our leadership here, we just, our hearts go out to those family members. We want to pay that respect to those folks. And that hadn't happened in the last time we spoke. So we're just touching base on just a couple of things we just want to touch a little base with. And there's just a lot of struggles that are happening. But you know what? We're woke. We're on top of things. We've got things that we need to stay on top of, and we're going to continue to do that because we're going to have to chew gum and walk at the same time. You know, if we lose a co-host, that's all right. We're going to hold it down. We're going to bring in some really good speakers for you. We're going to keep things moving right ahead as we continue to do what we need to do to keep moving our progress ahead as far as what we're doing at and letting you know here at the VADSBC show live. We're just happy to see you. It's exciting, but we've got some troubles, but troubles won't stay around for long. You got to keep pushing ahead. Keep pushing ahead and doing what you need to do. Let's talk a little bit about what I love to talk about. I don't know whether you guys were there last Saturday, but guess what? Voting rights. The march on for voting rights in Washington to pass and support H.R. 1, which is the voting rights, excuse me, that's wrong, H.R. 1, which is the For the People Act, and H.R. 4, which is the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. You had a lot of good folks out there from the Democratic Party and a lot of the good supporting folks from the various different activist organizations. You had a crowd of around about 20 to 40,000, whatever that number was, out there strong supporting that. And what we were able to get done, we were able to get the voting rights, the John Lewis Voting Rights Act passed. So that act has been passed. And now it's going on to the Senate. We've kicked it off with the marches, not just in Washington, D.C., but there were marches all over the country. So people are doing that because voting rights are foundational. If we don't have voting rights, we can't get anything else done. And what we're trying to do now is make sure that those voting rights are in place. So all the rest of our agenda from a federal perspective, we get in place. And we're able to repeal and roll back some of those really onerous laws that's out there. And I'm going to bring a special guest on who may even talk to some of that a little bit later. But there's a lot of attack on voting in this country, unfettered voting rights access. We here in Virginia have been doing a fantastic job, but guess what? We need the other 49 states. We need all those people in order to help us get things done. So what we want to do is just make sure that we continue to do what we can. You need to go to your to Congress, congress.gov. You need to put in your address. You need to get your representatives will come up based on your address, and you need to call them. You need to tell them that we need the Voting Rights Act passed in the Senate, and we need to also have the H.R. 1 passed too. And so all those things. As a matter of fact, I don't have my co-pilot here, and we're a little bit casual here, folks. So, you know, we want to have fun, but usually I'm missing Erin because she normally gets these slides up for me. So I'm just going to review what I normally review real quick. And I'm going to talk real quick about the H.R. 1, which is For the People Act. Once again, you need to understand what's in that. That's the expanding access to voting, making sure same-day voting registration is available. 2 weeks of voting at early voting at all polls, and getting rid of all that purging of the voter rolls, restoring the full protections of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. Also, we want to be able to address finance reforms. We want to be able to address all the sort of things like banning money and foreign money loopholes, looking at election security, and making sure those things are in place to make sure we have that from a cybersecurity perspective and to prevent gerrymandering, so that the elected folks don't pick their voters, but the voters, they pick the elected people. So that's going to, they pick who they want to have. And those are things that we need to get in place so the policies for the people get to happen through the folks that we elect and through having unfettered access to the voting poll. The other thing we want to talk about is HR 4. And with HR 4, it is about putting pre-clearance back in so things can't happen before 180 days before an election. You have to be able to make any changes to voting rights that are 180, if it's happening. I'm getting my tongue all twisted up here. I guess I'm missing my co-host. Let me tell you, you have to declare any changes to any voting rules at least 180 days before an election. And that requires pre-clearance with the Department of Justice. That is what just got passed in the House of Representatives. And that's a fantastic thing. We want to make sure that those things like that continue to happen. So what I want you folks to know, call your congressman. Here's our call to action here. You want to go call your congressman if you know what the number is and who your congressman is, and give them a call and say, we want you to support HR 1, which is For the People Act. We want you to support HR 4, which is the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, which is now in the Senate. And if you don't have it, go to congress.gov, put in your address, and they will tell you where you need to go, exactly who your congressmen are and who your, when your congressmen are, that includes your representative and your senator. So that's as simple as it is, but we've been pounding away at that every week for the last 8 weeks since the show came out. So we want you to continue to do that, because that fight is just beginning. And there was fantastic marches happening all over the country, kicking that off. So stay with it. Stay with it, folks. Stay with it. We got to fight. You can't get tired. You know, you might get sick and tired of being tired, but you can't stop. You got to move on, move on. Okay, let's go on to the next thing. We're going to talk a little bit about Virginia. But before I talk about Virginia, I don't have a co-host this week, but I've got a heck of a wingman. I got a wingman who has superpowers. This guy right here, from the Democratic National Committee. We want to talk a little bit about who he is. It's Andrew Lachman. He's been around as chair of DNC Small Business Owners Council since 2012. He's been, wait a minute, I got to give, and this is what I'm missing, Aaron. I got to give my man Andrew everything he needs. I'm going to pop it up. Okay, there it is right on the screen. That's what we want to see. Andrew Lachman has been chair of the DNC Small Business Council since 2012. He's also been a DNC council member since 2008. This guy is fantastic. He's the head of the legal rights for Contentstack LLC. I guess he'll tell us who that is, a small business that he works for. Also, he's also worked as a senior advisor to Congressman Ted Lieu, and has been a consultant to the California Legislative Committee for the Arts. He's also advised presidential campaigns, the Clinton campaign, the Biden campaign. I mean, Andrew Lachman's been out there getting it done. And this is a person who's going to be my wingman today. And he's going to really bring the thunder. He's going to tell you what's going on from a small business perspective, what the party's doing. We're going to weigh in on whatever we want to talk about politically, and just put more information out there. Last thing I want to tell you about Andrew is he's also chair of the LA County Bar Association's for Privacy and Cybersecurity section. So Andrew's got it from A to Z. I didn't even talk about the stuff in the middle of the paragraph. He's worked for Paramount Pictures, OSI Digital, MoveOn.com. He's got one heck of a resume, one heck of a background, some incredible experience, both politically and both in business, and particularly with small businesses. So without further ado, folks, I want you to put your hands together. And I want you to get excited, because we're going to bring to the screen, we're going to bring up our next guest, which is Andrew Lachman. Andrew, how you doing, man? It's good to see you.
I hope you can hear me okay. I broke out the microphone for the first time in a while.
I can see you on the mic. I got my mic kind of hiding in the background back here, but it's here. It's here. Oh, good. I need to swing it around here. It's kind of catching me in the background. But Andrew, we're so glad to have you on the show, man. How you doing?
It's a pleasure to see you, my friend. It's great to see you, and I've been catching your show and some of the great topics you've been covering. And you know, it's not well known, but the first two small business caucuses in this country and Democratic parties were California and Virginia. So, you know, we've been, I used to be the chair of the California Business and Professions Caucus before I became national Small Business Owners Council chair. So, you know, you guys have been in Virginia, have been really writing the book and are the gold standard for small business caucuses and Democratic parties in this country. And, you know, as I said, it was just 2. Now we've got, what, 13? You know, we've got, thanks to your great work and work of others, we've got the entire West Coast covered from, excuse me, from Washington, Oregon, California. We just started an Arizona one. We've got Texas. We've got South Florida. We got Georgia, thanks to your amazing work and the work of State Representative Darshan Kendrick. We've got South Carolina, North Carolina, DC, New Jersey, Michigan, all of these great small business caucuses that are out there in state parties, making sure that small business has a voice in the Democratic Party.
Well, let me tell you, Andrew, it could not have gotten done without you making the requests and the folks from the DNC to get things done. I also want to take the time, it wasn't just me, but we've got two prior chairs, Tom Greason and Bob Haley. Tom Greason, another great attorney out there in the healthcare industry, is a small business, and retired veteran Air Force. Both of these guys are attorney. And also Bob Haley, who's the Air Force veteran and also another attorney, as I just said. He's also CD chair, congressional district chair for the 11th district here in Virginia. So I stand on some pretty tall shoulders to help us get there. We've been working together, but now we've got you. So now it's time to really kind of hear what you've got to say, and maybe just kind of give folks, Andrew, a better idea of the sort of things that you do and that you've been doing. I want to kind of turn the mic over to you, just let you sort of introduce yourself.
Sure. Now my nose is split in half. There we go. All right, that's a little better. So as the chair of the DNC Small Business Owners Council, we represent and we organize efforts to make sure small business is heard in the Democratic Party, and also, frankly, to relay some of the great work, particularly that congressional Democrats, state Democrats, like your last two governors, Terry McAuliffe, especially since he's coming back, have done for small business, what local government has done, Democrats in local government have done in small business. I mean, we can't forget here that, the PPP program was something that was put together by Democrats. Republicans, when they finally found out about it, they put all these loopholes in that allow, particularly out of the Senate, that allow restaurant chains and the LA Lakers to get PPP loans, and the Small Business Administration under Trump was going around approving all of these loans. But even when Biden, he did so many events with the small business community when he was running for president. I know personally, I was involved with a group that they get a lot of the credit for putting this together, but we did probably close to 25 to 40 different small business events in Wisconsin, in Virginia, in Georgia. I did one with former DNC chair Tom Perez at one point in Nevada, in Arizona, and this made a big difference. And the messaging came out when Biden became president. The Republicans wanted, are willing to talk plenty about helping big business, but when it comes to small business, it's the Democrats who put the rubber to the road. They're the ones that made sure that community development organizations, community development finance institutions, which serve communities of color, got PPP loans into the hands that needed it, because the Trump administration didn't really care about that. They're the ones that made sure that Black farmers and arts organizations and nonprofits in our community got the aid that they needed. We had something close to $26 billion in aid for restaurants, thanks to the American Rescue Plan. This is because of Biden,
right,
and because of congressional Democrats getting in there and standing up for small business, making sure they get access to the capital they need, making sure that they get the support that they need in these tough times and to adapt to these environments.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, Andrew, and we usually bring folks in a little bit later on during the show, but not just because my co-host with the most is that Aaron's not here, but I also wanted to talk a little bit about the election in Virginia, and just kind of mention the fact that, the folks who are running, Terry McAuliffe, as you mentioned, Terry, our election is on November the 2nd coming up. We want to make sure folks are registered. We have to continue to keep Virginia in the column with the Democrats. We've got Hala Ayala, who's running for a lieutenant governor, who would be the first Latino to actually and woman to be lieutenant governor here in Virginia. And of course, we've had Mark Herring there for the attorney general slot for quite a number of years, doing a great job. And of course, there's other House of Delegate races and local races that are going on as well. But right now, Virginia does have control of the Senate. And on the state level, they do have the House. and they do have all of the executive offices, statewide offices. So they're getting some things done in Virginia. If you were going to give people advice about statewide elections, and you guys got a little bit of a barn burner there happening in your state too, we'll get to that.
Unfortunately, yes.
What advice would you give? What advice would you give folks here in Virginia and across the country when we talk about things that are happening? But Virginia has something happening every year. What advice does the DNC Small Business Council chair have for us?
Look, until about 2 years ago, California was the same. We changed our state constitution to allow local elections to occur at the same time, require them to be at the same time as our general elections every 2 years.
Right.
Because we had, we also had elections every single year. I live out here in Culver City, and we had the same thing. It's like I could barely get a rest recovering from the presidential race, and I had to jump in to help out with the city council race here to make sure that we have a diverse majority here in our city council here. So yeah, no, I think you really need to look at is where the rubber hits the road. Republicans continually talk about how they care about small business, but if you look at the policies that they advocate in terms of destroying access to capital, in terms of weakening anti-competition laws so that big businesses, the Walmarts, can come in and wipe out small mom and pop businesses on Main Street, that's where the Republicans' interests are. When the Democrats, when they step in, they come up with great plans. They've come up with ways to work with business locally. Here in Culver City, for instance, where I am, we changed the rules and we turned some of our main throughways, took out half of the streets and made them into outdoor dining, and then worked with nonprofits, including one that I'm involved with, called the Exchange Club. We did a Feed Culver program where our charities bought meals from our local restaurants and used them to feed those who couldn't afford a meal because of the COVID recession. That's where it is. If you look at who's come out with policies that put small business first in terms of making sure that you're safe, because many of us, we have families, we have children that some of are too young to be immunized still. And you look at these states that are run by Republicans with no mask mandates, with forcing schools to have unsafe environments for teachers and for children. We had one school up in Northern California where they hadn't put a mask mandate in place yet. One teacher, unvaccinated, gave COVID to 15 of her 22 students. That's the difference between Republicans and Democrats. And Democrats have been putting those policies in place that put people first, including our small business. And don't forget, these small businesses, these are ones that were powered by by women, communities of color. Something like 45 to 60, somewhere in the 40s of new businesses started in this country under the Obama administration were started by women, started by people of color, particularly African American women, Latino women, Asian American women, and and Biden has remembered that, not only in terms of his appointments, the head of the Small Business Administration, who's from California, Latina woman, and the deputy administrator, who we hope will get a vote. Republicans have been holding him up merely because he's Muslim American, a guy named Dilawar Syed, who's just phenomenal out here, and I had the chance to work with. And as someone from the Jewish community, we've never had any issues. He's been a wonderful partner throughout. That shows the commitment to diversity. And your governor has been the same way. The last 3 governors, all Democrats, have been the same way. And that says those are the values that you and I are fighting for. And if you look, if I remember right, you have small business Democratic clubs throughout the state.
Yes, we do.
Look to those endorsements. That tells you who you should be voting for, because they know who've been in there fighting those battles for you, so that we can hold on to the majority in the House of Delegates where you are, hold on to the state Senate, and keep all the executive positions in the Democratic column. And if I can also say, here in California, we've got this recall, right?
Right.
And
yeah.
so
Let's talk about that.
Larry Elder, who's running, who said that that women shouldn't have equal rights in the workplace. and who allegedly, threatened his ex-fiancée with a gun. We've got this guy John Cox who lost the gubernatorial race by 20 points, and now thinks that because he can tour the state with a bear, who we don't know how the bear's being treated, but basically that somehow qualifies him to be governor. The voters already spoke about this. We have elections every 4 years. This recall system in California is a horrible abuse being perpetuated by the Republicans to make everyone waste their time and distract from the business of helping Californians and Virginians.
Let me interrupt you for a second there. Don't the Democrats control the local government at the state houses and where that's in? Let me get my Sacramento.
Yeah,
right?
Sacramento. We
they control all that. So can't they change that recall law,
No.
or does it have to stay the same, or do they need to have that whole the recall thing to change the recall law? Does it have to happen that way?
Right. The way that California law works is that if you have something that's passed by a proposition, and our referendum system and the recall system were both part of our created by proposition, the only way you can change that is by another proposition. And look, there are some good reasons for that. If you look at what's happened in Florida, Florida passed some laws expanding Medicare, allowing people who are finished their parole to be able to vote. And now there's Republican-controlled state legislature is trying to do everything they can to destroy the will of the people. So, we're very cognizant of not wanting to undermine the will of the people here in California. But that's why we have regular elections, not these ridiculous recall elections, which mostly have been funded by by those red hat folks and the Trump folks across the state, particularly in the northernmost part of the state, who have been the most resistant. I was just up there on a family vacation, and they have restaurants saying that no mask should be required here. This is America, as if somehow watching out for your fellow citizen is not American.
It's not American, exactly.
Right.
It makes no sense. But the more you talk about this, I heard some folks talking about it on one of the shows I was watching, and since this is on the internet, everybody can get this around the world. They said it's really kind of simple, though. If the Democrats are organized here, people all get their mail-in ballots. All they have to do is open it up and check off no, and that keeps them Gavin in office. Just dump it in the mailbox. It's as simple as that.
You don't need to vote on these wannabe candidates. We have an anti-immigration guy who calls himself a Democrat. We have some YouTube star running. We have Caitlyn Jenner, who that doesn't qualify. Being a reality TV star does not qualify you to be governor.
I think we know that
now. Even Schwarzenegger at least had a background in some kind of caring about the environment, policies in the environment, even though Gray Davis was doing a great job and should not have been recalled. But this group of this clown show that's running, the 47 people running for governor, is just not. Is just not going to, is just not going to cut it. And frankly, with what we've got at stake, you're going to end up with a governor who's going to, I know most of people are in Virginia, but I just want you to know what we're doing with California. All of these gubernatorial candidates, none of them have a plan to combat climate change. Every single one of them want to repeal the mask mandates and the public, the policies that allowed us to slow down Delta in a way that, in Florida and Texas, they've gone out of control. But, California, we've got populations almost 1.5, 2 times their size. And our per capita, number of cases is squarely in the middle of the entire country, while Louisiana, particularly their state house rep and their attorney general is saying that mask laws don't count. And that public health doesn't matter. And in Texas and Florida, those are the top states. These are Republican-run states are the ones that have been hit the hardest, and the Democratic states have the ones that have been contained that the best. And so if you look at what these Republicans would do to this state, it's just horrendous.
Well, let me tell you, I want to just go ahead and deliver a message to you. I don't know whether you can see these. Erin's a great co-host and a great technical producer here, but I do see her in the comment section. She is saying hello to you and saying she wished she could be here. Also, I've been seeing some questions that have been coming in on my phone, as well as I don't have Facebook up, but they said, here in Fairfax County, we've got 3 school board members who are being recalled, and we're fighting to make sure, or they're trying to recall them. It looks as though we're going to hold back that tide too here in Virginia, at least here in Fairfax County. So we're kind of aware of it, but not as much as those things are happening, man, out in California. Matter of fact, the strategy to prevent a recall before a recall ever happens, how do the folks in California do that, and how can small business maybe help out with that? Or maybe there's some things that need to happen on that are propositions that are small business measures. I don't know. You're a California guy. Tell me what you think about it.
Look, I mean, the problem is that we've got people out here who are paid to misrepresent to people walking in and out of supermarkets and go door to door to tell people that this is about reopening schools or it's about something else. And I think that's the difference. And the recalls that we have defeated, we had an attempt to recall a city councilman who had led efforts to make our streets safer for bicycles.
Right.
We've had efforts to recall a number of LA city councilmen who have been active on a bunch of these issues. Has just been out there and making sure people know not to sign these petitions, that they're never what they appear to be.
Right.
And make sure that they know what's at stake. And that's what we've done. And, we've started to turn the tide. We're still within the margin of error in California. And that's scary because it just shows our turnout's low, but the numbers are starting to move up a little bit more. And, I was just at our state party executive board. We just elected our new officers for our business and professions caucus in California. And everyone was talking about the recall and how we're, uniting to combat it. But the other things we've been, working on is, during the last election with you all, a lot of people out in California, we wanted to make sure we were helping contribute to, great candidates that allowed you all to help collect the majority. And we don't get credit for that. You get credit for what happened there. But we just wanted to help in terms of making that all happen. But it's all about education. It's about letting people know, that these people are out there trying to take away and make sure that your right to vote didn't count by trying to hold the election all over again.
Well, I know our job really as Democrats are to elect other Democrats, just as members of the Democratic National Committee and our local state parties. But as small business caucus representatives and what you're doing on the national level, what are some of the things that you think that we can do, bringing forth more small business concerns to our elected officials and working with like-minded folks who may not be directly connected with the party? I mean, there can't be any. So
let me talk on the national level. What's been going on? I can talk about the local, but nationally, we've got an infrastructure plan that will make broadband available to rural areas. $65 billion is set aside there to make sure that a business that's somewhere out there in the Smoky Mountains, not the Smoky Mountains, up in the Blue Ridge and up along that. I'm trying to remember the highway. I used to drive it all the time when I was going to law school down in Louisiana. But
Appalachian Trail, or you're talking about in Virginia, or leads? That's in the mountains in Virginia. You're talking about in Cali, though, right?
No, I'm talking about in Virginia.
Okay.
Is it the 83 that runs there along the sort of the spine of Virginia where the mountains are run? I'm going to look up and just make sure I get the right, because I used to.
Well, I don't know the highway, but I know that Appalachian Trails runs right through Virginia into North Carolina. But,
I'm talking like where Harrisonburg and
that area
start, and then go all the way down to Bristol, right?
Oh.
That part of Virginia, they want to make sure that broadband is available
all those areas.
in those areas, and also making sure that the urban areas that are underfunded, where people who live in cities right now, they don't have access to broadband in many of these downtown areas, and they have to go down to the local Taco Bell to access the Wi-Fi.
Oh, you mean from their homes? They're exactly. I mean, it's a problem in rural. It's a problem in some urban areas. When the urban areas, it's not so much that it's not there. It needs to be cost effective for folks to be able to have it. It's really like a utility. Everyone needs to be able to have it.
Exactly.
And
it needs to be there. And with what Aaron is dealing with in Louisiana. And hi again, Aaron. I hope you're safe, and hope everyone in your family is safe, and we'll get through all of this. And so our prayers are with you and everyone else who's dealing with this hurricane. But I think the important thing here on the national level is making sure that we're communicating to our members to make sure that they understand issues that support small business, and oppose big business on the national level. On the local level, it's about having that relationship with your city councilman. If you had a city council person or a county supervisor, or in some places they're called county judges, it just varies, by the part of the state, the country you're in.
Right.
There are some people who, we have a lot of great Democrats who have experience, who are small business owners like you and I, who are, who are elected officials. But for those who aren't, we need to educate them and understand the impact what they do on small business. And when we do, they're very big supporters. And we've seen that, over and over again. But it's about developing those relationships with your elected officials, and then getting into those chambers of commerce and making sure that your voice is heard, that your values are reflected. Affordable health care increases increases your employee loyalty, and makes them want to stay around longer.
Let's talk
have
about
affordable wages, have livable wages, they spend more money in small businesses.
Well, this is a perfect segue, because let's talk a little bit about the PRO Act. I'm sure you're familiar with that, right?
We'll talk more about it, and we can go into the details.
Okay, so well, the PRO Act is out there, and I want to make sure I'm giving you all the right information. It's really about affordable wages, and it's about labor having a fair opportunity to be represented. A lot of sort of things that are happening that are small business related with that. And I'm going to bring up something too. I should have my notes in front of me, but I'm going to.
This is the one that updates the NLRB Act, right?
Right. Exactly. Right. It updates that act. I want to use the right words, and I don't have it in front of me, but I'm grabbing it. But go ahead.
So it makes it easier to organize. It takes back a lot of the underwriting, so the undermining, if you will, of labor rights in this country that Republicans have done.
It repeals the right to work. A lot of small businesses will benefit from, I guess, as I see it, is that if people are getting a fair wage, they're able to negotiate what they need to have, then you're going to have more of the larger business playing fairly, which gives small business a fair playing field to exist. Because right now, if you're underpaying people and you're not in your category, and you're putting them in the wrong categories as far as their labor skills and positions like that, you can get into the details of this act. These are the sort of things that I think Tim Kaine is behind this, and I believe Mark Warner. I don't know whether or not that's having a lot of play out in California. I know you guys got your own concerns right now.
I don't know if you saw, but Starbucks today, the Starbucks workers are starting to organize. And Starbucks is one of the better ones. I mean, if you compare it to what, for instance, Walmart does to their employees, amongst others, where they, basically they get by on undercutting margins that kill small business, and they do it by pushing their employees onto public assistance programs, as opposed to making sure that they have an affordable that they have a livable wage, and they just keep watching their profits go up, while they keep paying their people the same thing, and sometimes worse. And so, that's an example, and then, in the garment worker industry, you've got folks being paid piecework that comes in under minimum wage, and they use that to try to skirt paying even the minimum wage to their employees. Same with, with restaurants and whatnot. So, it makes a big difference. And again, if these people have money to spend, they spend them on small businesses. So having that is a good thing, and something that lifts all of our boats together.
Well, I want to make sure I represent this thing the proper way. It's going to be quick. There's about 13 things that PRO Act brings to working people. It strengthens employees' bargaining rights. It holds corporations accountable, increases wages. And we talked about that minimum wage. It also addresses inequality in the workplace, expands the civil rights for workers, and protects collective action, removes barriers of barriers to the workers' voice so they can say what they need to say in the workplace. Let me just go for these last couple ones here. Modernizes the union election and enforcement processes, and it ensures most workers are included under NLRA protections. Repeals right to work laws, helps fix the economy, helps to fix our democracy, gives people a real say in their future. I mean, that's kind of like the 13 things. It's probably, it goes more in depth, but those are the major points.
And they've been working out some of the stuff to make sure that contractors and small businesses are, given certain protections. So I know that's all being worked on too. Right now, a lot of big business funded groups like NRF and NFIB, which says they represent small businesses, but then they have the owner of 5 guys on their board of directors, which makes amazing burgers, but that's not a small business. I'm sorry.
No, they're not a small business, and it's kind of amazing what people try to do to say a business is a small business. If you've got 500 employees, that's not a small business. Most small businesses you're talking under 10 people, and most of them, the vast majority of them are mom and pop shops. You're talking 1 or 2 employees. So,
and that's why the Biden administration, when they did their national rescue plan, they focused on making funds available for these businesses with under 10 employees, because a lot of them got edged out by the big banks and weren't able to take part in the early rounds of the PPP. And this sort of changed the playing field and make sure that it was available to everybody to get the help they need during those difficult times.
Well, guess what? I got help from a caller or a listener, and they said the Interstate 81 north-south goes along the Appalachian Mountains. So I got an A in geography.
I got to share with you. I went to law school, and the problem with that means is that the reason I did that is because I wasn't too good at math. So if it wasn't for things like QuickBooks, I don't know what I'd do in terms of keeping my own stuff balanced. But I'm lucky that we've got great programs out there and great. Great small QuickBooks isn't a small tech company; they're into it. But great businesses out there that are innovating, trying to help poor people, people who have bad math skills like me to run our businesses.
I'll tell you what, Andrew. Tell us a little bit about what is your pet issue, pet project, things that you really would like to see get done, or some things that you've been working on. Tell us a little more about your business, and then some of your when I say your pet issues, but issues that are really of concern to you.
Sure. Well, I had my own law firm for a number of years, and my oldest client was all of my clients were basically companies with 20 or fewer employees. Very few of them were more than that. But ultimately, my oldest client, which is a woman-owned, minority-owned technology company out of the Bay Area, kept growing and growing. And so Contentstack, which is a content management platform for enterprise and small businesses, they've been growing really fast and have enabled me to join their team. And I'm very lucky because it's a bunch of wonderful progressive folks who really care about their people. They've adopted a town. They have staff in India, as many do in the tech industry, and they've basically adopted the community college there in the community. To make sure that through these difficult times that they have the support that they need, because what we've been seeing here in this country even pales to what India went through with their Delta waves. But even here in California, it's all about it's always been about what being together as one team and making our communities better, and that's what I love working about with this particular company. And then the issues that we've been working on. A lot of it, frankly, has been, more local stuff in my community, but the broadband issue has been a big one for me personally. I was one of the co-chairs of our state party's resolutions committee, and thanks to a couple of folks, including one of our outgoing region directors, Bridget Hunley, on the national level. She's the West Coast, the regional director. We put through a resolution calling for digital equity plans so that we have access, because it makes a difference for small business to be able to compete if they're not being charged, $100, $150, for access to business broadband. And if homes in their communities are being charged $40 or $50 and not $80 to $100 for access to affordable competitive broadbands. That's been my biggest issue that I've been working with. And then the other one is has been, I do a lot of work with the Jewish community out here, and making sure that we have good partnerships. And frankly, we're all in this together, whether you are, Jewish, Buddhist, Christian, Muslim, whatever, however it is. We've all been targeted by the Trump administration and those policies, and trying to get us back, to where we're all in this together, and not divided and turning against each other has been a big issue as well. And so, we, in California, we've had a bunch of great laws about making sure that, that the people who are formerly incarcerated, have a good second chance, and able to get jobs and get back out in the workplace to get the education training they need, making sure that our businesses have great support in our community, and that we have affordable housing in our community, which has been a very big issue here in California. In my city alone, you can't buy a house for less than 1.3 million. It's just ridiculous.
Whoa, where do you live?
So well, I mean, look, in Culver City, we used to be this little island surrounded by West LA.
Well, listen, we can't talk in Northern Virginia, DC. It's not cheap either.
No, but
Fairfax County, it's no same numbers, man. Go ahead.
In Culver City, we have Apple, Amazon Studios, and TikTok all moving in.
Right.
And that's pushing, and we have to, on our housing plan, we have to build 25, close to 20,000 new units in our, in our region, and our town is only 38,000 people. How do you find a way of keeping housing affordable for future generations when you've only got so much space, you've got only so much water out there, and so sustainable development has been a very big issue. And we found some great ways to fund it in terms of changing the way we do real estate transfer taxes, so that the big real estate deals have a higher level of real estate transfer tax that help all of us, and that help us make up our little tiny Culver City, find an additional $2 to $3 million in our budget for the future years. Because every couple of years we get a big real estate deal, whether it's the mall here that we have in town, or Amazon buying up what used to be Culver Studios.
Right.
Those kinds of things can make a big difference for our community. So equity and sustainability are very much small business values, and what we fight for in California. And we're seeing that across this country as well.
I'm going to throw something at you that I would like to have started to do. And basically the point is, I'm going to say small business. How does this affect small business, and throw some of the issues that are at you, because small business is really affected by a lot of other things. So
as long as they don't involve math, as we've seen, I can answer any other question.
Don't worry, no math here. Let's talk about student and parent loan debt.
Yes. Well, look, as you know, this administration has already forgiven close to $9 billion in loans, student loans. We'd like to see, we'd like to see up to $50 billion, and there's a lot of people pushing for it. But a lot of people are held back by the student loan debt. It's parents, it's people. I'm in my early. I just turned 51 recently, but there are folks who are much, who are much younger, who can't afford houses because of student loan debt. They can't start families. And the price of education, inflation wise, far outstripped the regular rate of inflation. So we need to find ways of forgiving large amounts of student loan debt, and finding some paths to do that. And I know the administration is doing everything it can to try to find those paths where possible. There are just some limitations in the law that 51 votes in the Senate is not going to get us to where we need. In order to get the votes necessary to make.
Well, if we can get those budget resolutions passed, how they do it, what they call it, reconciliation or whatever, and some of this money, I guess, coming back from that forever award that the president has finally gotten everyone back that wants to come back out of Afghanistan. $300 million a day is what he was talking about. They could get rid of a lot of student loan debt and a lot of other things now that that's not going on anymore. And the other thing that I wanted to just sort of say about that is that, we have to give the Democratic Party, which we're both in, credit for what the president is doing with free community college, right? In the latest, was that the American? That was the other, the first infrastructure plan has that in it, doesn't it? And so that's a good
everything got
start.
trimmed down a little bit, but that's
Yeah,
investing in education has got to be a
right.
part of our infrastructure. Investing in electrical vehicle networks,
But
it's good for business, and it's going to be a part of our infrastructure and helps us, address climate change, which is very real as we're seeing.
right. But let me stop you real quick here, Andrew, because what that does is for people going forward. But one of the things I think small business wants to do to help people, like you said, who are saddled with this debt, and the parents who were signed for these loans for the kids who are saddled with this debt, is to make sure that these loans that are currently out there, that $2 trillion, they need to work at getting rid of most of that debt, so innovation for small businesses can do what they need to do, and people can get into business as long as they have healthcare and everything else they need. They're not impediments to going into business. We are going to basically kill the goose that lays the golden egg, because the only ones who are going to be able to survive are the big boys, because you can't do it without healthcare. You can't do it if you got $80,000 worth of student loan on your back. So, so that was my first one. I'm going to take the host challenge. The second one I want to ask you about is let's talk about equity for specifically for different constituencies of small business: African-American business, Latino business, woman-owned business, veteran-owned business. What do you think can be done to provide more equity down that for those various different constituencies? You see, I didn't say people of color. I didn't say because you really have to look at each one of those groups. What do you think?
I mean, each of them are affected in different
ways.
Some of them are affected in common ways. If you look at particularly amongst first generation, Americans, there's the issue of a lack of access to capital that also particularly affects especially affects Latino and African-American communities, and certainly segments of and certainly Native American communities and large portions of the AAPI community as well. When you're talking about mentorship programs, not all of us, so many businesses fail in the first year because people have great ideas, but they don't know the cycles of business. And so when you've got community finance development institutions and workforce development centers in communities, which can provide mentorship programs to help new business owners understand how to plan for business cycles, that makes a big difference. And I know making sure that these small business loans are available to to these communities as well. And you have a variety of minority loan programs, but also you've got these micro loan programs, which were so important and which the Trump administration and the Republicans tried to eliminate every single time, and Democrats were fought against that. Making sure that not all of us. I hate to keep mentioning Donald Trump as an example, but we don't have a parent that can give us millions of dollars so we can bootstrap our own business, and that's not bootstrapping. I'm sorry. But so making sure that access to capital has got to be a key issue as well, and then having good anti-competition laws, good competitive laws to deal with anti-competitive behavior has got to be really important too, so that the Walmarts and these big chains can't come in and push out the mom and pop stores off Main Street.
Well, that's where I'd like to come in and say, because when we look at acquisition of products and services on a federal level and on a state level and a local level, if they are basically making sure that these particular groups have opportunities or basically cordoned off areas of business where they're going to say, hey, you're here, you pay taxes, you do what you need to do. We want to make sure that you have a fair opportunity so the big boys don't come in and suck everything up. Or they turn around and say, yeah, we did all this for small business, for whatever, but they never actually give you the numbers and say, who did the money go to? Because that's where it's important. Who actually gets the money, and is that money there every year, and is it backed up by U.S. code or state level code? So these businesses can say, we're going to do 50% of the business, or whatever the number you want to do, with these particular constituencies of small business, and they're held accountable for it by law.
That state government, local governments, and federal governments can do is, obviously individuals can contract with whoever they want. No one's saying
Yeah,
anything
but we're
that way.
talking
But
state where everybody, it's everybody's money. It doesn't belong to just one big company and they get to take the lion's share of the money or the taxes.
But
Tax
to
money.
build on your point is that the
Yeah.
government can play a key role, just as it played a key role in building the middle class in this country,
Right.
by desegregating federal employment. Similarly, by creating these opportunities, by offering these opportunities to to businesses, Black-owned businesses, Latino-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, and making sure that they have that chance to be able to compete. Because as you know, in this case, the best way to get a federal contract is because you already had a federal contract before that.
Right. Yeah, the chicken and egg syndrome, right? And then, if you look and you go back and you look at one of the biggest sort of welfare programs you really want to have out there, I'm going to say it again, $300 million a day for 20 years.
Yeah.
Now, it wasn't the mom and pop shops over there getting that sort of resources. So they need to make these things more available to the access to small business, because you and I both are big proponents of small business on a state, local, and federal level. We got to figure out ways to work with our partners to get it done. The Biden administration has addressed some of these things, and I'm happy. But we're moving the ball forward. We got more to do. And but what else? Well, I guess I'm going to give you one last hard one. That one wasn't that hard. A matter of fact, I tell you what, I'm not going to do it. Here we are with 5 minutes left. I'm going to let you go ahead and maybe throw one my way, or you throw it out there and you answer it yourself.
Well, look, I will say this, the more that we can find ways of allowing healthcare to be covered,
Absolutely,
having a public option, making sure that we can find ways of paying for healthcare off of the backs of employers generally, as a fundamental right. I'm not saying there are people who want a single payer system. We got that in California. People push that. I don't know if we're going to get to that, but there are multi-payer systems like you have in Germany, which, again, are not on the backs of employers, but have found ways in order to make sure that, when you've got healthy workforce, then people stay on the job. When, and it's for too long, we've tied it to employment in a way which has been problematic. And there's lots of ways people can still profit and be competitive and serve their communities and have affordable healthcare, and without necessarily going to extremes. But healthcare has got to be a big issue here in this country, and dealing with health equity, has got to be environmental equity to be a big issue in our communities as well.
Well, as I tell people, tax money is your money. How that money gets distributed to whom and to how is really up to the policies that are developed by the candidates that you elect and put in the office for you. So when you come there and make demands of those candidates that get elected, you are basically saying, hey, here's how I'd like you to distribute the money. This is why we elected you. I'm not here taking somebody else's money. This is our money. If you can dole out $300 million a day for 20 years, certainly.
And the last one, by the way, is making sure that we have that our infrastructure is funded, making sure that our courts are funded, so that big businesses can't rely on armies of corporate lawyers to drive small businesses out of business, making sure that we've got mobility in our community so that people can get from place, live near their jobs, and making sure that they can get back and forth throughout their communities and invest in their communities, and have and frankly have safe communities without having our communities be threatened, civil rights be threatened as they've been as of recently. And these are all things that can be done without making our communities less safe, less accessible, or less mobile. But the Republicans are so afraid to think outside the box, to introduce into these new ideas, that it's Democrats have been the ones pushing and bringing out these ideas to the fore.
Well, you just mentioned every major Western power is already providing low cost or no cost education. The same thing with healthcare, and the same sort of thing with respect to making sure that people are doing the right things for the environment. I'm glad we have a good administration in it that's going to get back on those issues. Just looking at what happened in California with the fires, looking at the floods, all the rest of those things, and all those things affect small business, because small small business are made up of the people, and this is things that people need. So listen, we're down to 1 minute, man. I want you to give us your social media handles. I want you to tell us how people can get you if they want to talk to you about what you do with your company or with the DNC. Go ahead and throw that out so people know it.
So if you go to DNC Facebook, go to DNC Small Biz on Facebook. That's where we are. Hopefully, I didn't turn off my camera and checking checking where my locations were. Also, we have a Twitter and an Instagram feed as well that are also DNC Small Biz. So with the Z on the end. So that's what I definitely urge you to go out and check out. I mean, I'm Andrew Lackman. I'll be honest, I don't use Twitter very often. I prefer Facebook, number one, not because of privacy reasons. They suck on that. But when 75% of the people, and you can talk with people and communicate with people as opposed to, lobbing missives the way that sometimes people do on Twitter. I'd rather have those kinds of discussions out there. So that's why I've generally stayed away from Twitter as a whole. But those are just a couple other areas where we can, where people can get in touch with me. I have my own Facebook page there as well. And so would love to stay in touch with anyone who wants to get involved, particularly if you want to get a small business caucus started in your state. And if you don't have a good small business democratic club in your community, you should talk to Mark.
And we'll be happy to get it started. Some exciting things are happening down south and across the country, Andrew. So we're looking forward to doing more of that. Only thing you talked a little bit about your company. You used to have your law firm and everything, but people kind of know who that is. We have that information out there as well. If you want to say anything about that, feel free. This is a small business caucus.
I mean, it said Contentstack's a great company, and I'm blessed to be working for it and to be their head of legal as well. And if I can also say, Aaron was talking about the importance of partnerships, bringing together public, private. That's how we solve problems. Government doesn't solve everything. The private sector doesn't solve everything. But if we all come together for that common purpose, which has made this American dream, that's, and makes the American dream possible, allowed my mother-in-law with a $5,000 loan to open up a daycare center for small children. Things like that. That's what's going to make a big difference in this country. And that's what Democrats do. And we're lucky to have you and all the people who are out there watching making a difference.
Well, Andrew, I'm going to end on that note. That's a fantastic note. But, we've come to the end of it. And I just want to welcome everybody to come back next week so you can be on the VADSBC show live. And we want you to come back and see us. Andrew, thank you so much for being with us. And we'll have you back another time, probably after the November election coming up here in Virginia. We'd love to have you on as one of the analysts to talk a little bit about that. Okay.
After we defeat the recall and after you all win every single election you're going to win, we're going to have a great party.
Fantastic. See you, Andrew. Take care, man.
Care.
All right. Bye-bye.